Welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast where we talk marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. Purpose number two, Tom, to spotlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. With that, we have a very special guest, Tom Zeeb. Back in 2001, Tom was broke as a joke. I like that. Broke as a joke, man. I heard my parents and they used to use that a lot. So that really stood out to me. Back in 2001, Tom was broke as a joke. A near-death experience while whitewater rafting pushed him to find a new way to break free of his 9-to-5 job. His first deal, right, in quotes, almost took him under as well. But real estate investing saved him in the end, both personally and financially. Hundreds of deals later, he is happy to share the same negotiation, marketing, and business techniques that set him free. So you can do the same. Simple, structure, and step-by-step techniques that take you from spinning your reels to doing profitable deals. Tom, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jerome.
Absolutely. So Tom, tell us a little bit about, we read your bio, we hear about the story and how that changed your life. So give us in your own words, your personal story and how you got to where you got to.
Yeah, it was 20 plus years ago. I was stuck in a day job. I didn't like it. After a while, you think you're going to like it, graduate college, get a job, think it's going to be great. Everything's going to be just fine. And then you wind up feeling trapped, stuck, uninterested, not working to your full potential and doing what you really know you should be doing and not particularly being passionate about what you want to do. And I was stuck, and I was really stuck financially because I realized all I had done was spend money, and all I had done was get so deep in the debt I couldn't figure out a way out. And then, so I did the only logical thing. I went on vacation and then disappeared for a couple of weeks with some buddies. We went about as far away as you can get. We went to India, on the other side of the world, and went whitewater rafting. And I'll tell you, it was a great experience. I felt fantastic until I went over the edge of the raft and under the water. And then when I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, because I was kind of starting to pass out, I thought, I could have done so much more. I've wasted every chance I've had. I haven't done anything yet. I kind of made a decision. I get out of this, I'm going to make things different. I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to change everything. Well, obviously I got out of the water, but I got back. Nothing had changed. How was I going to change anything? And none of it was real. And I didn't have a way out until somebody handed me a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I read that and I snapped. And now I had a way out. Now, I didn't have any details, but I had a direction forward.
Had a vision. That makes a lot of sense. Rich Dad Poor Dad, that was the book that changed my life too and got me into real estate. So we have that similarity there. I know it's done the same thing for a lot of people, but it means a lot.
Yeah.
All right, I have some questions for you. I want to get your perspective on different things, right? So I would like to hear from you, what do you think is stopping most people from getting involved in real estate?
I think it's just raw fear and a total. It's very easy to be addicted to the way things are, whether or not you realize that you're addicted to it. It's just that classic things are what they are. They'll never change. They'll changes for other people. And so people get a fear that they can't actually do it. And when you live in that real state of doubt, you're right. Ain't nothing ever going to happen until you decide to make something happen. That is your choice. I know it sounds cheesy. It sounds like some, the typical self-help book, but but it's true. But you've got to make the choice and start to actually do something, actually implement, not just talk about it, not just think about it, actually get out there and do something.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm really big. That's the name of our podcast, implementation. Yeah. We got that right in our title because I find that most people struggle with that. When I was first starting in real estate, I went out, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, just like you. And I was like, now I need a mentor. And I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this by myself. And it took me like 3 years, it's 2 years to save up $3,000 just to pay for that mentor. But I understood the value of that. And one of the things that he helped me realize was the importance of like going out, having these conversations and finding deals. And reading your bio, right? Like your longer bio, I understand that you understand the importance of marketing. So I want to hear from you. Like, can you tell us like the number one thing that's stopping people from getting involved in doing some deals?
Number one thing, consistency. Consistency in their marketing. I mean, some people it's actually, doing anything, but
Okay.
a lot of people, once they finally pull the trigger, they'll do one round of mailings, send one group of postcards, or call one person. I mean, I guess you must think you're really lucky if you're going to call one person and think it's going to turn into a deal. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news to anyone, but it ain't enough to talk to one person. You've got to multiply your effort, right? There's got to be a lot more. You got to call 100 people, talk to 100 people, and if that sounds daunting and exhausting, well, it is a little bit of work, right? This isn't just add water or push button riches. It takes a little bit of work, but if you're willing to make 100 phone calls, you'll be surprised what'll happen.
Thank you for sharing that. When I first got involved, I learned from that mentor, and he would teach me some of Ron LeGrand stuff. And one of the things that Ron LeGrand that stuck with me from Ron LeGrand was the 100 house rule. In order to get one deal, you got to have 100 conversations, no matter fluctuate. So that's highly important. You got to have those conversations. Most people, right? I teach it now, and they're like, "Oh, how many calls did you make?" I made 3 calls, and none of them working out. It's not enough, right? So can you talk about that? Can you go a little bit deeper and talk about the importance of, having those conversations, talking with people, negotiation, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's the only way that you are going to finally get into it and get your deal is by accepting that it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable at first. You're probably going to have people hang up on you. People are going to call you names. They're going to cuss you out. They're going to threaten to call the government because you made a phone call, and they're on the do not call list, even though you're not mass calling. There's all sorts of things. There's just negativity. The tougher you can make your skin to that, the better off you'll be. The faster you quit worrying about everyone's little nonsense and just do what you got to do. Make the calls. If you become, how do I put this? If you become a little bit perversely addicted to being rejected, if you get addicted to being told no, then every no is one step closer to your yes. So the key is to actually be happy that somebody told you no, because that means you actually made the call, you actually made it happen, you're actually in motion and you're moving. And if you keep at it, it's just a matter of time before somebody says yes. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Thank you. So reading your bio, right, it says hundreds of deals later, right? Hundreds of deals later, he's happy to share some negotiation, marketing, and business techniques. So can you share with us some like your top tip for negotiation?
Yeah, top tip for negotiating. All right. So I've got a whole slew of these that I use. I've got 50.
Okay.
It's almost like a deck of cards, but my all-time favorite, Jerome, is flinching, which is anytime anybody says any number to you whatsoever, I want you to act like you were physically attacked by the number. So say a number, Jerome.
$50,000, Tom.
$50,000. Wow. That's a lot. And then watch for the reaction. I mean, how do you feel when I flinched? How do you feel about your number?
I feel guilty.
You feel guilty? Really? You don't feel good about your own number?
No.
Okay. I don't even know what we're talking about, right? I didn't ask you the price. You put a dollar sign on it. That's cool. I just said, say a number. Are we talking about a house, a car, a boat, a stick of bubble gum? But it doesn't matter. You feel guilty and a little weird about your number, like it must be too high. So flinching immediately puts downward pressure on the other party. It automatically kind of lets them know that number ain't right, and it's going to have to change if we want to turn this into a deal. And so that's my go-to first technique, first tactic in the negotiation.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and letting us see that live in action.
Yeah, I know it's a little weird, but
yeah, for people that's like, you know what, I'm interested. I want to get started. Like, how do I how do you beat that fear of getting started? Because it's one thing to say it, right? We like, go get it done, get it started, right? And people, you got some high achievers that's like, you know what? I want to face fear. I'm going to just do it. So, but what are some strategies, some suggestions that you have to beat fear so the person can actually get started?
Yeah. I tell people in these scenarios a couple of things. One is just try it. Well, I'll tell you what, make 3 calls. Go to the newspaper, grab the for sale by owners, go to Craigslist, grab some for sale by owners, and just try it. And then after each time, look in the mirror and realize you're still breathing, you're still alive, and you're fine. Someone you never know you're never going to meet, who you don't know from anyone, and you're never going to talk to again, just called you a bad name or just cussed at you on the phone. So what? You're still alive. Carry on. Now, I know that could be a big step for people. So I suppose there's a point where you have to want the outcome more than you worry about the fear of the rejection or the pain or the uncomfortableness. So some people, it's going to be until you get to that point where you're just fed up working, fed up not having enough money, fed up having more debt on your credit cards than you have income, fed up realizing that you'll actually never get out of that credit card debt because compound interest is destroying you. And there's got to be, maybe that causes enough pain where you snap and just move ahead and do it. Or hopefully you're the type of person I can say, well, I'll do it 3 times. I mean, maybe you need to be challenged. So Jerome, I challenge all of your listeners to just make 3 phone calls and then see if you're still alive.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us, right. So I wanted this one. I was just having a conversation yesterday. I was talking to the gentleman and he was asking me all these questions about a deal and what it would look like and what that would look like every question, every step. And I'm like, and it's like, it really depends. So I'd like to hear from you, like, what's the best way to get clarity about moving forward with a deal? Like, is there one strategy? Is there different strategies? Like, how do I get clarity on moving forward with a deal?
If you learn the process, you have to recognize that you're learning a process, you're learning the way things should flow. That doesn't mean they're always going to flow that way. And that's the problem when people say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about that? We could take there's 100 different permutations. There's 100 different options and shades of gray that we can get out there and realize there's all these different forks in the road. But just learn the overall process, understand what you're doing, and try. Because if you get stuck, here's the number one thing. I think sometimes people don't want to call because they're going to say something or this deal is going to take a twist and a turn and I don't know how to handle it. Well, then here's the solution. Take this approach. When you're talking to somebody on the phone, always be willing to say, that's a good question. Let me check with one of the senior people in my group, get back to you. Now, are you part of a group? I don't know, maybe. I mean, you're a follower of this podcast. That's a group. But just say it because it takes you off of you don't feel the pressure to make a decision anymore because you're not the main one. And it's just a nice way to realize you're not going to get cornered. Worst comes to worst, just say, hey, good question. Give me a few minutes. Let me ask somebody else. And then you can go ask them.
Thank you. So you mentioned groups, right? Communities, mentorship, coaching, all this stuff matters. And I like to make sure people understand that it's impossible to succeed without a team. You can't do business by yourself. So I would like to hear from you, like, what are some suggestions that you have for like groups? And I'm thinking like particularly like how we know each other. Like I met you like informally through like a RIA group. So I would like to hear from you different perspectives, RIA groups, coaching, mentorship. I would like you to talk about the importance of these groups in these communities.
Yeah, I think I'll preface this by saying, obviously I'm biased because I run a couple of real estate investor associations. But I don't think there's any bigger bang for your buck than your local RIA. Find a good RIA group in your area or online. There's a lot of online as well these days. And that's your community. Those are your people. That's the places you find your buyers. That's the places you can find your mentors. That's the places you find your contractors and your recommendations and your attorneys and your money lenders, right? All this stuff is coming from that group and that community. I don't think there's a better spot to start.
Thank you. Could you tell us, could you go deep, like tell us what a RIA group is, right? We say RIA, what is that? What does it stand for? Sure. And, a couple more benefits. And then I would like to hear from you, like, I want you to talk about your RIA.
Sure. All right. So RIA, REIA, Real Estate Investors Association. It's a group of like-minded people that get together, usually on a monthly basis, to discuss real estate deals and to learn from each other. Because Jerome, I don't know about you, but I don't just walk out my door, go down the street, and go to a restaurant and find other people that know what the heck a real estate investor does. It's maybe a little more common with a realtor, an agent, but that's not. I'm not. I'm an independent, non-licensed investor. I buy properties. I don't list them, and you don't find groups of those people around. So you have to go to a place where they get together on a regular basis, and that place is a RIA, a Real Estate Investors Association.
Thank you. Can you tell me, like, are all of them great, or some are good, or are there signs to look for? Should I just join the first one that comes up? Like, how can I get involved and make sure I get the best bang for my buck, like you said?
I would go to all of them that you can find in your area, and I think it's just like people. They're not all good, and they're not all bad. And they're not all in between either, right? Honestly, they're all over the place, just like people and their personalities. So go to all of them, see what you like, and then keep going back to the ones that you felt comfortable with, the ones that you got a good vibe from, the ones that you thought were there to really help you and that could provide a lot of value, like a good network, like good options of people, like a good education, because that's where you're going to get all that. This isn't it. A real estate investor education isn't something you get in school. And yeah, there's a lot of information floating around out there online, but to have it curated by a RIA that knows what you need, because they deal with our kind all the time, right? They deal with independent real estate investors. And so that curation that the RIA does, I think, is the key.
Thank you. Can you tell us about your RIA? Traction RIA, right?
Traction RIA, right? Traction RIA. So it's tractionria.com. We operate in a couple different areas. Washington, D.C. is our traditional area. And then we also have groups in Tampa and Sarasota, Florida, as well as many of our meetings are online, or we have follow-ups to our meeting online now as well. So that covers the nationwide base. And we aim to help people to get traction in their business. That was the number one. I remember when we changed the name, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. That was the number one frustration that kept coming up as we interviewed our members. They said they were looking to get traction in their business. And so it became a natural thing to, hey, let's call this Traction RIA.
Nice. I like that. You know, one of my favorite business books ever is Traction. You ever read that book?
I've not read it. It came out around the same time. But
Okay.
yeah, I've not read it, but it's from what people told me, it's that same concept, right? I want to get traction. People use that as a word, as a phrase all the time, because that's what they're after.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because I didn't understand the reasoning behind Traction, but yeah, that's what I find. Most groups that I've been associated with, they'll help you get there, they'll help you get some education, but it's like, all right, I'm trying to go somewhere else now. I'm trying to gain that traction. So that's really valuable that you present that in your RIA group.
Yeah. So look, as a marketing lesson, right? I named the group after the main desire that my people had. So I looked at the people I serve and am using a message that connects with them. Well, that's the exact same thing we need to do as real estate investors. So if you're looking for people in foreclosure, think about what their problems are, what itch they have, and scratch it. That's what we're after. What buttons do they have that you can push? If they're going through divorce, what are their issues? If they're inheriting a property from a loved one that passed away, what are their issues? If they're a sick and tired landlord because they've evicted somebody for the third time in as many years, what other hot button issues that you can now speak to in your marketing messaging? Because the more you get that message to market match correct, the more that you match your message to the market, the more likely they are to raise their hand and respond. And by raising their hand, I mean, they're going to pick up the phone and call you, or fill out a form on your website, or send you an email.
Thank you for sharing that, because it did sit with me when you said Traction. I was like, I understand RIAs, but Traction was like a word that it's a philosophy that I identify with. I don't want to just sit here. I'm trying to gain some traction. So that's very valuable. And speaking of marketing, right? Can you help us understand what marketing is? Tell us in simple terms what marketing is, and then I'm going to talk about some of the benefits and reasons why we want to be marketing.
Yeah. Marketing in a nutshell is finding your peeps. You got to find your people. Who are the people you're after? So look, if you're a creative real estate investor looking for good deals, you got to have A motivated seller. Now, I know we've all heard that term before, but let me make sure I define it my way. A motivated seller needs to sell the property more than they want to sell it. They need to sell it because of a problem, even more than they want to. So solving their problem is their number one issue, which is perfect because I can help them solve their problem, which is their number one thing, and they win because my number one thing as an investor is getting the price right. So we're not arguing about the same thing. So in the negotiation, we can have a win-win. I can solve the problem and get the price I want, which is awesome because we do have a win-win negotiation. And it starts with good marketing. If we were both after the same thing, we're both after price, well, now we're fighting about the same thing. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. And then we don't have a win-win scenario. So that it's interesting that as important as the negotiation piece is, but that's kind of number two. First, you got to find the person, but you help your negotiation. You help out part two by getting part one right, by marketing for the right people and reaching out to them with the right message.
Thank you. Could you tell us why, tell us what most people get wrong about marketing?
Consistency.
Repetition,
all right. Multiplication. Yeah. They do their marketing one time, Jerome. How many times have somebody told you, I tried it, it didn't work? Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Tell me more about your trying. How many postcards did you send? How many letters? How many phone calls? And usually they're telling me, 1, 3, 5. That's not enough. And then, okay, great, you did that. How many times did you repeat? How many times have you sent the same letter, the same postcard to the exact same list with the same message? There's usually zero repetition. And I would make an argument, I think it's a very strong argument, that the quote unquote secret to marketing, it's not much of a secret, it's repetition. And that's what's missing because most people don't repeat. They get conscious that, oh no, I don't want to spend more time on this, or oh no, I don't want to spend more money on postcards that don't go anywhere, but you've got to repeat.
I agree. And this is my book.
Yeah.
And the whole reason I published this book was because exactly what you're saying. Most people would send out one message on Facebook or one postcard round or go do one event, one this, one that. And when I first published the book, the name of the book was called Remarketing. Remarketing, because it was you got to repeat. You got to keep doing it. You got to keep going. And that's the biggest problem that people have. It's not going to find the leads. It's not the content. It's people are not following up. They're not top of mind.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. That was the whole reason that I published the book, because the biggest mistake is not the marketing techniques and the next this and the next that. It's we're not following up with those leads or those people that we're, reaching out to in the first place.
Yep. Most people have a total and utter lack of any follow-up. And folks, that's your problem, right? It's a total lack of any follow-up. So yeah, you said a key term in there. I call it TOMA, TOMA. Top of mind awareness. You got to stay top of mind. And the only way you're going to do that is by constantly being there. Look, think about the TV commercials you can sing along with, or the radio jingle you can't get out of your head because it's stuck in there. That's not because you heard it one time. It's because you heard it so many times and you're so sick and tired of hearing it. But but it worked. That's why you know it.
Absolutely. And speaking along those same lines, I have children. I got 4 children. Nice. And my youngest 2, there was this song, Baby Shark.
Oh, yes. Yeah, good looking now. Oh, you just put that in my head now.
Yeah. And it sticks with me forever because, the marketing is this top of mind. You keep hearing it, Baby Shark, Baby Shark, Baby Shark. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Perfect case in point. That song. Yeah. Like it or hate it. I think most people you eventually get to hate. And yet you know it, you remember it, and yeah, that's it. It's something. It's a message. It gets out there really quick and simple, and you've heard it a gazillion times, so you remember it.
Yes. Tom, tell us why goal setting is cheesy.
I do sometimes refer to goal setting as cheesy, and I'm not saying it's not somewhat important. But it is a little easy. If I set my goals and I can just manifest it and it's going to appear magically in front of me, no, it's not. Okay? You should have a vector. You should have a direction. You should have a path forward in your mind. But that's not there's going to be hurdles and roadblocks along the way. So I would much rather you have a plan of action than just an overall goal. The goal is nice, but the plan is more important. And I'm gonna throw what I just said under the bus in a way, but I want people to understand what I'm saying here. That the plan is important, even though the plan never quite works, because nothing ever follows the way you had planned. But the planning process, where you actually take the time to develop a plan, when you're going through the planning process, you're figuring out so many different things so that you can focus on the one path. Well, that one path is, you're not going to be able to stay on it. Life doesn't work that way. We all know that. But the fact that you went through the process of planning, now you understand that when life throws you a curveball or a slider or a sinker or a fastball, whatever it is, you know how to adjust because you've been through the planning process. So it's planning that's important, not goal setting per se.
Thank you. I agree, and I appreciate that. Something I tell people is like, you're not going to have the whole picture. Map it out and take the first step.
Yeah.
There are guaranteed things that are going to come up, but you just got to keep moving. You got to keep adjusting. Tell us 3 major screw ups that can knock you out of business.
Let's see. 3 major screw ups that'll take you out. No marketing, like flat out, don't do anything. Thinking about marketing is not marketing. Planning the market is not marketing. Planning to plan to someday maybe do some marketing ain't marketing either, right? You have to do it. So I find a lot of times it's just flat out nobody takes the first step, and then they wonder why nothing happens. So that's a big one. I've got to reiterate the repetition. You've got to do your marketing more than once. You've got to get that message out there repeated. And then the third thing would be getting that message to market match correct. If you don't speak to your people in a way where they go, yeah, that's me, and this guy or this gal's, they're talking to me, and they're also presenting a solution. If you can't get that messaging right, then you're going to be dead in the water. Those are the 3 things.
Okay. All right. So tell us about you've done hundreds of deals. Tell us about one of your students or your RIA members that you've helped get through a deal, like your favorite situation. This person came into our RIA group. They were looking for this help, and I helped them get this by this. Tell us about that.
We've got a bunch of them. Let me use one that's really, really fresh in my mind because it just happened a month or so ago. So I was speaking at another RIA group in a different part of the country and teaching them marketing and negotiation and deal control. So how do you get paid? This fellow, his name is Roger. He took all the lessons to heart. Said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out there and make it happen. He went out and went driving for deals as his marketing source. Went around neighborhoods around him, started looking for properties that looked like they were in disrepair or looked like they might be a little bit neglected. They looked like they needed a little TLC, little 10 to 11 care. And so he started mailing them and then following up with phone calls, which makes the phone call even easier. Hey, I'm calling to follow up on that letter I sent you last week. Think about how much easier that conversation is for you. Don't even worry about that. It's easier for you. Hey, I'm calling to follow up on that message I sent you. Great. Well, he gets one where the guy says, yeah, I'm getting older. I can't handle this house anymore. I want to move somewhere else. I really do want to get rid of this place, but I don't think I can list it because it's not in good shape. Perfect, right? Perfect. That's it.
Yes.
Perfect for an investor, not an agent anyway. And so Roger, my student, worked with this guy. He followed every step of my process, right? He did the marketing like I told him. He negotiated it like I told him. And then he got into some other complications in the deal, such as this guy was saying, well, is my family going to agree? Because he wasn't doing that well. And he stepped in, made sure, deal with everyone else you got to deal with them the right way, deal with them polite, deal with them professional. He had used my contract. You present a good, solid contract. You come across as professional. When the family looked at that contract, they were comfortable with it because it's professional and everything's done right. And so you set all the terms down. So within a couple months of meeting me, he knocks out his first deal, which was $17,000. He wholesaled it. He said, I don't want to try rehabbing it. I don't want to buy and hold it right now. He just wanted to get in and get out. So he wholesaled it, which means basically selling the deal to another investor. He made $17,000.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us, since you got so much experience, I would like to hear about one of your most recent favorite deals as well.
Yeah, I have one where um, I always use the various negotiation techniques, like flinching. Right, flinching is just a constant thing. I flinch. I flinch at everything. Anytime I hear a number, five, ooh, flinch. Five. So I'll do it, and it doesn't seem to matter what the value of the property is or what you're dealing with. The flinching just works. It's the science behind that works. So I have a deal. I've started playing around with some beach rentals and some more expensive housing, just in the nature of where I am. And I said, let me try this. So was negotiating on a multi-million-dollar property, and I wanted to get the price down. And I'm using the exact same techniques that I use on a $50,000 property or $100,000 property or $200,000 property. And I'll tell you, they work just as well. In fact, you could argue they work better, because since you have a higher number, the spread is bigger.
Yeah.
The drops end up being bigger. I mean, as a percentage, it probably stays about the same, but the overall dollar amount can be huge. Then I also got in the position on this one deal where it was, how do you negotiate with a very rich person who doesn't need the money? You've got to make it about something else. And so I kept trying to figure out what were the important issues to the seller. What were they really after? What was important to them? And then make sure that I framed how selling me the deal would help them achieve those goals, or be afraid of other things. So this one particular property had some wiring issues. And I brought up the fact that I knew the person had done quite a bit to help children and help kids. And I slightly played off of it. I said, wow, how could we ever put children in that house with the wiring being that bad? And it was kind of, there was unhappiness, but concessions were made to account for that as well. So if you find the hot buttons for each person that you're dealing with, that's a key part of negotiation as well. You just want to get to the point where you're talking their language, because they have issues along the way. There's pressure on them to want to sell as well. No matter how rich or how poor they are, there's pressure on them to sell.
Thank you. How can someone add immediate value to you or your business?
To me or my business, or to themselves?
You or your business.
Immediate value. I would show, like, immediate value as investors. Get out there and do something. I would get out and drive for deals. It doesn't cost you anything.
Okay.
I use an app to do it. I use Deal Machine as an app to help and assist me with driving for deals, tagging the properties, researching the properties, and then sometimes you find phone numbers right there and you call them. Or if you really want to have some fun, go knock on the door and watch what happens. But you'll have an immediate rise in value, because even if the deal goes nowhere, you're getting that immediate feedback from somebody, and you're putting yourself in a situation where something good can happen.
All right. What are 3 books that you recommend to the audience, and why?
3 books. Well, if you've not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think between you and me, right, we're saying that's what got us rolling. I think that's on the must-read list. I would, number 2, there's a book. It's a few years old now, but that doesn't matter. It's still worth every page. It's called To Be or Not to Be Intimidated. That's by Robert Ringer. That is a phenomenal book for getting your mindset straight about, hey, it's a business jungle out there, and yeah, people are out for themselves and whatnot, but you got to learn how to survive and how to handle yourself and maintain. I guess I would call it frame control. I don't remember if that's the exact words he uses, but from a negotiation perspective, that's what I would call it. That book meant a lot to me, and I highly recommend that to others. Then a 3rd book, I guess, what kind of marketer would I be if I didn't say my own book, which is called How to Correctly Flip Houses for a Profit.
Oh, I didn't know you had a book. We would have talked about that a little bit deeper. I would love to. So something selfishly that I do is I collect books. You can kind of see some in the background. I write books. I would love to get a signed copy of your book.
I would love. Shoot me your address.
Okay. All right. You got it. I'll send you my address. Tell us about your book. Man, I wish I knew that.
That's all right. So look, my book covers what does it take to flip houses for profit correctly, right? How to correctly flip houses for profit. The correctly word is in there because it particularly makes one of my attorneys really happy. She was always beating us about investors get into so much trouble because they try to cut corner or they're doing something not quite right, and then it gives everybody a bad name, and investors get all these laws passed against them, all this other nonsense. So I want to get it done. I want to get it done correctly. Now, flipping might be fixing it up and reselling it. Flipping could also be what I predominantly do, which is wholesaling, put it under contract and sell the contract to somebody else, sell your position in the deal to somebody else. So that's what I view as flipping, was one or the other. And so how do you correctly do it? I walk people through the whole process in what is a short read, just right around 100 pages. There's also an audio version available. I didn't want to write War and Peace because I think that War and Peace is intimidating. I wanted to write something that you'll sit down, get sucked right into. I tend to write the way I talk. So if you enjoy hearing me talk, maybe you'd enjoy reading the book. If you don't like the sound of the way I talk, well, then maybe it's not the right book for you.
Oh man, I had no idea you published a book. I definitely want my copy. And I'll get with, maybe we can do like another episode talking about that book.
Cool.
So, all right. What is one question you wish I had asked you, and how would you have answered?
One question. What would that be? Yes, good questions. I'm not sure I'm feeling like there's anything totally incomplete. Let's see. What would be? You could ask me.
There was one question I could have asked you.
Yeah.
If there's one question I could have asked you, but I didn't ask you, how would you have answered?
What does it take to have longevity? How about that? Because we talked a lot about getting started, but some people are going, I've been in the business a while. What's it? Is it a different game with longevity? A little bit, but honestly, I think most of that game tracks back to the same thing I'm trying to get people to learn at the beginning, and that's make sure you have a process for repetition. And on a longevity perspective, 20-something years in, you got to have some systems and some automation in place. You got to have your marketing going out like clockwork without you being involved in it. I think the problem for a lot of people is they put themselves at the center. And if you're always at the center of everything, then you're also the choke point and the point of failure. A lot of times you can be the single point of failure. I've done much better as I've learned to automate out my marketing. And if it can't be computer automated, then get a virtual assistant to do it. And then you write the process, you say, this is how I want it done. These are the steps of the process, and you give it to them and let them follow the steps. Now, all you have to do as the owner of your business and as the business leader is get in there and make sure they're following the process. So you can, in your kind of flow chart of how things get done, you have certain points that you would check in on, or make sure you get copied on their message, or that they report back to you at a certain point. That way you have those little check pieces, but all you need to do now is follow along that those checks are being done. You don't need to do every single step of the process.
Thank you for sharing that. There was a quote by James Clear that I can't remember. I'm going to mess it up, but it's very valid because I just saw it. And he said something like, goals are for people that want to achieve, but systems are for people that, I forget. It was such a good quote. It was such a good quote, man. I was like looking for it while you were talking, but it was a really good quote by James Clear. I'll probably find it and send it again because it's very valid. Like, you want to have a goal, but the goal is a one-time thing. If you want to repeat winning, you need a system, right? You need that longevity, what you just talked about. So,
have a system. And I think an overall component to all this, Jerome, is at the beginning, it's really easy. I need money. I just got to do a deal. I need money. I got to solve this immediate problem. But in the long term, make sure you've set it so that the real center of your goal is your lifestyle. It's you and your family and your kids and the way you want to be at the middle. Otherwise, so many people wind up, they go off on their own and they create a job. They're so desperate to quit the job and not have to answer to anyone else, but they basically build, instead of being in someone else's prison, they now own their own prison cell. And so I see people build a business that's like a prison for them. What was the point of that? To keep your lifestyle and your family at the core and the center and build the business around that, not the other way around. Too many people try to wrap their life around their business instead of wrapping their business around their life.
Thank you. Could you tell us that concludes our episode? Could you tell us where we can learn more about you? And please tell us about your book too. I wish I'd known that earlier.
That's all right. Look, I'll send it to you. I'll sign it, send it to you. You read
Okay.
it. We can do another episode on that. But so
Okay.
all of this information, you can find more about me online. If you go to tomzeeb.com, Tom, Z as in zebra, EE, B as in boy.com. The whole podcast there on negotiation, a lot of trainings, a lot of interviews with other people that I've trained as well. You'll get a lot out of that podcast. My main training site is tractionrealestatementors.com. That site's got an enormous amount of video training. You can also find my book there. So the link to the Amazon page for that, and it's also available in audio version. And then since we mentioned it earlier and you're talking about real estate investor associations, be happy to have anyone at our online events there at tractionrea.com.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been excellent, Tom. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for doing this episode. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to end us. I want you to sit here so we can catch up in the green room, and then we'll end it. All right. Thank you so much.